Podcast. 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 Yeah, welcome to the latest episode of the Racer X Exhaust Podcast. I'm Jason Weigandt. We are back. Had a week off because I was all over Florida. Had about 4 or 5 events or something like that during Bike Week. It's a great time of year, but not a great time to be in my studio here to record podcasts. So we are back with none other than the great Aldon Baker. Things looked a little rocky for Aldon last summer. There were rumors that most of his clients were leaving, starting with Cooper Webb. And then Zach Osborne and Marvin Musquin eventually left as well. I know Osborne retired, but at one point Osborne said then he was going to return to racing, and even when he did, he wasn't going to be using Aldon anymore. Webb moved on, started working with Michael Byrne. Musquin with David Villemin. That led Aldon to take on new clients with Malcolm Stewart and Aaron Plessinger. Things have stabilized now quite a bit because Stewart is really on the move this year and on the verge of getting his first ever 450 win. So that part of the program is looking good. And then I found out during this interview that Webb is suddenly back. Webb is back with Aldon, full on Aldon Baker training. And Aldon even told me that to get the full commitment from Cooper, he wanted to see if Cooper would buy a house back in the Central Florida, Claremont area because Webb had moved to Tampa, which is where the 83 compound where he had been riding is. And I guess Cooper's buying a house back in Claremont. So Cooper is back on the program. I didn't even have a question prepared for that because I didn't even know that had happened. I heard it hinted out on the TV program in Detroit, but I didn't know it was this full-on legit. So there you go. We'll unpack more of that in this episode. But first, a thanks to our sponsors, Yoshimura-RD.com. They've been here the entire time we've had the Exhaust Podcast, and they provide the exhaust system for bikes such as the Twisted Tea Hep Suzuki team, presented by Progressive Insurance. I think that's what they're calling themselves. Where Justin Bogle grabbed the whole shot and led a bit in Detroit. There's Yoshimura Shod RMZ. Suzuki's and Yoshimura, they've always gone together well. As are Hondas, such as Jet Lawrence's machine. We laughed when there was a Can Jet Lawrence have a perfect season poll after he won the opener on social media for Supercross Live. And then he didn't even win the overall at the very next race, round 2, which is Triple Crown. So he's not going to have a perfect season, but let's be honest. Maybe he could have. He sure looks darn close to unbeatable on his Yoshimura Shod Honda HRC machine. Go to Yoshimura-RD.com and check out an exhaust system for your machine, not just Hondas and Suzuki's, by the way. Yamahas, the Austrian marks, Kawasaki's, they've got it. Street and dirt, too. And also Yoshimura_RD on Instagram. Also, thanks to Liat. Awesome to have Liat jump back on board with these podcasts as of late. Different people ride for different reasons, yet there is a common denominator that binds everyone who puts their body in the line for the sheer enjoyment of it, and that's what Liat offers as a brand. They make protective wear, helmets, goggles, riding gear, knee braces, boots, and of course, neck braces, covering riders from head to toe for both moto and mountain bike. But what Liat really stands for is the promise of things to come, because they're in the business of making sure you have the confidence in the equipment to push yourself faster, harder, and further than you thought you could. Visit them at liat.com. This podcast also sponsored by On Track School, the K-12 distance learning school for students who are on the go. Chase your dreams and blaze your trails with nothing holding you back. There are no limits to what you can do when the classroom is where you make it. On Track School meets you where you are with a flexible, personalized education that happens at your own pace. So pursue your dreams and your education with On Track. And after the episode, be sure to head over to their website. That's ontrackschool.com. And we'll give you $100 off your registration. Type in the code. It is RX22, capital R, capital X22, $100 off registration at ontrackschool.com. And of course, brought to you by Racer X itself. Subscribe to the magazine. Now let's get to our interview with Aldon Baker. All right, here we are with the great Aldon Baker. And I feel like we've done you a disservice. You're usually pretty open with interviews and stuff, and a million things have changed probably over the last 6 months. I don't think you've been asked a lot of questions about new riders that have left, riders that have come and gone. So first of all, just thanks for the time, and you're usually pretty honest, so I appreciate that.
No, thanks, Jason. I appreciate you and all the work that you do. So it's good to to be chatting with you for sure.
Hey, I'll start with the good news. Your guy Malcolm Stewart here is really coming on strong, coming close to wins, doing all
Yeah.
these things, right? Fast in qualifying, good in heat races, second in points, all that. So you have to be pretty happy with the progress. It's a big step, like almost week by
Mm.
week, it seems the improvements there.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy with Malcolm. I mean, as you said, he's improving, at a great rate. I think things could have been a little bit better if he hadn't, got involved in a couple little things, as we've seen. But I think overall the speed, the endurance, and the capabilities are there. So I always look at he has all the ingredients now. We just got to get everything to line up right so that he can actually, win his first race, which I feel he's totally capable of doing that. Yeah.
I think because Malcolm was always such like a fun-loving, smiling guy. I don't know if we ever knew how serious, like as a competitor, he was, because he seems like he's just having fun regardless. But does he have that, killer instinct inside him that maybe we don't see on the outside? Like, I want to beat these dudes, I want to win, I want to be a champion.
Yeah, I think he does for sure. I think it's been masked a lot in the past, just
Right.
kind of going along with what you said, where I don't think he's had the opportunities to have the full package. I think he's tried and things just haven't worked out. I get the feeling that this is the first time where he feels he has all the pieces, and that is kind of brought out what's the desire and that heart that he does have inside him. And I see in practice when things don't go too well, or he has a rough race, you can tell if a guy is bitterly disappointed, or that there's that inner fight that, man, I had that, or he doesn't just roll over. But it is easy to see with his type of personality that he is a happy kind of guy, which I love that about him. But he does have that side for sure, that he is bummed, and he's all in, and he knows he can win.
Well, I think the fear everybody had, okay, so you get him and Plessinger on your program this year, and they're like, these guys like to have fun. So you, like it or not, fair or unfair, now have this rep of like, there is no fun with Aldon Baker.
Mm.
So how has it actually gone? And with Aaron, of course, we lost some time now with an injury, but how has it
Yeah.
actually gone jiving your program and their personalities?
Well, and I think there's been a misconception where, the guys don't have fun with me. I mean, I want to have fun. I want the guys to have fun. But there still has to be the job that needs to be done. And I feel that accountability is not going to go anywhere. And I think if everyone understands that going in, we do have fun. I mean, there are days where I'd say we can bend a couple of things depending on how they're doing. But, when it comes down to it, in order to get the job done, you still got to put your head down and do the work. And then I'm all about after that, let's go and have fun. But there again, the season gets full of travel. The schedules get so tough that sometimes to find that so-called fun aspect, or what I would like to know, and I've asked the guys, what is your idea of a fun day? Is that we do no riding and we go play golf, or do we sit on a boat somewhere on the lake? I don't know. And they don't actually have an answer for that. So
Okay.
I think the way I look at it is it goes back to having that balance again. You've got to get the work done, and if you get the work done well, then the fun will come. And in one thing, I can hands down say, if you're not doing well on the weekends, I don't care what. No one's having no fun at any time. So that's my point of view.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're all competitive in the end, right? Like if
Yeah.
they're getting eighth, you could give them the whole week off, and they could be
Yeah.
in the boat every day. They're not pumped.
Exactly. So I think there's, like I said, I think there's a big misconception about the whole fun. Is like, show me anyone that is having so much fun and winning. It doesn't happen that you still got to do everything right, and you've still got to put it together. Sometimes I've had years, I mean, I can go back to Ricky days where it was fun going to the outdoors. It was almost a guarantee it was going to work everybody every time. And those were fun times, but we still did the work. We still didn't not forget that they had to be done. But the races were fun for sure.
So in the end, with both Aaron and Malcolm, it hasn't been like 7:30 in the morning or whatever time you start. Like, where are you guys? They're not showing up, or they're trying to quit, or they're not giving me. They're only going 75%. Like, that wasn't a problem.
No, and I think always when you've got new guys and they're with new teams, there's always that excitement. They want to give their best, so it almost fits really well. I haven't had one problem where, I've been trying to look for the guy in the morning, or he's late, or he's something or something. No, they're all excited. The dynamic with the group is really, really good, and that helps. I think they all respect each other. They all know they've got to do the job, and they've got to get the best out of what they're doing. So that part has been really, really great.
Define what the group is now. So we know it's Aaron and Malcolm, and then RJ Hampshire, right? Is there a fourth
Correct.
guy that's fishing with you? And then I know we have another group. So just explain how that all works.
No, so under me, I typically will do normally 4 guys.
Yeah.
So this year, when the off season started, there was Aaron, Malcolm, and RJ, and I on the other side, what I call the 250 group. We got Dean over there with what I call the up and coming guys, Styles Robinson and Jalek Swall. So I feel like we got a good balance now. As the season sort of developed and stuff, I've got a couple of other up and coming amateurs that we doing a trial period per se, in preparation for Loretta's, and so they're on that 250 side. And then lately, Cooper's come back. So that's been pretty cool. Obviously, I've done a good few years with Cooper, and now he's back into the fold, and so I'm back to my 4 guys. So it's pretty cool, and I think whatever's sort of gone on in the past, the dynamic of the group and the way they know each other and where they're at, we're still in a really good place, and the gelling of everybody is awesome.
Well, that just answered something. I was going to say, well, you wanted 4 guys and you only named 3. So you have 4? Cooper Webb is back riding with you? Is he doing what he did a year ago at this time, or is it changed? That's big. I didn't even know this.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's one thing. I mean, it's not when something changes or a guy sort of, comes back. It's not like, I mean, from either one of us, we're not going to be like, oh, well, we put out a press release. That's
right.
The big thing for me is, I think everybody knows I work for the group, the KTM Husqvarna and per se gas group. So I'm always sort of trying to help that group matter what. And the dynamic for me is that I maintain 4 guys, with me. Now, the good thing with the group, when Cooper left for a period, they didn't force me to fill someone in there. It was actually pretty nice. And then it actually worked out good, because if I had filled that spot, it wouldn't have offered an opportunity that if a guy thought, hey, hang on, maybe let me regroup, or let me change things up a bit and see what's going on and come back. So as a group, it works well. And yeah, he's, back in and has dived straight in. Unfortunately, obviously this last weekend, it took a big crash, and thank God he could have been worse. But I mean, he's still nursing a couple of battle wounds, but we're back on track and building, and he's still got that fight that I think everybody knows, and he'll still, go and put the best out there for sure.
Look, when anyone breaks up with anybody, they leave a team, they leave their girlfriend, husband, whatever it is. We always assume, as my boss Davey always says, things end badly, that's why they end. So did you and Coop have to mend some fences here for him to come back, or did you somehow maintain a decent friendship or whatever, even when he wasn't working with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt that, and he's always been respectful in that area. I mean, you don't go 3 years unless there's some complete blow up.
Yeah.
And I felt like even when a guy has moved on, I don't think there's ever been a blow up. There's more just been it's been a decision regarding what I feel I need at that time. Now that can change. And I think at that period in time, I know the program is tough. It's by no means easy, and there's a lot of accountability. And I've said that multiple times, and it isn't for everyone. And I think riders get to a point where they're trying to figure out what is the amount that I need to do to win, but without being sort of such a heavy schedule. Who doesn't think on those terms? So I don't feel like that's an unknown or a bad scenario. I think Coop looked for little avenues that he could possibly change up that might help him in areas. And obviously it didn't work out that good. And now he's come back to sort of regroup and figure out, okay, I've been down that road that was there and back. No really bad blood in the past, so it always makes that avenue is open to come back anyway.
And he's back. Like, it's not just riding at your tracks. Like, it's just exactly what he's doing. At this time last year, the same. Like, it's the full program. It's not like a hybrid version or anything like that. Yep.
No, it's the full program. That's one thing I do feel, and having learned a couple of things last season, was that I am, you're all in or all out. I can't do a half hybrid kind of a thing. I mean, we did try a little bit of that, but it doesn't work, because to me, the lack of, even from my situation, if something doesn't go right, well, then how am I supposed to be accountable if I'm not fully accountable in all areas? So it's not an easy, I think it's, you, like I said, you're either all in or you move on.
Well, it's kind of funny how this all works. Like, it goes in cycles, right? Like, you have all the success for a long time, and there was such an era of the dudes being so gnarly and serious, really starting with Carmichael, but Villopoto was the same way, where everybody was like, the more disciplined you are, the harder you work, the better it is. Then we get to this thing a couple years ago where it's like the teams need to give the riders more freedom with the motorcycle, which we keep hearing about with Tomac and Yamaha now. And the riders need to have more freedom to do what they want during the week. Not be lazy, but freedom. But you've always maintained, now you kind of have to do the same thing over and over. And I know it's the same thing over and over, and that's repetitious. But there's a reason why freedom, even if you're working, doesn't really jive with your program. You can't just do whatever, even if it's still training.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I think it depends on the athlete. Maybe some guys can pull that off. I'm not willing to take that chance. And I haven't seen guys that I feel at this level, with the amount of competition, can run a loose program per se and still come weekend by weekend and just be crushing at the top. I haven't seen that in 22 years. So I do believe programs evolve as the motorcycles and the teams have evolved. And I think we went through that phase, kind of like what you said, where the heavy hitter riders had their own facilities. Well, that changed the dynamic. Now that's not the case. So we're in a whole different dynamic too. And I think it's good. I think times change, things happen. But I still think, look, I've never met anyone that has done less and got better results. Can't get that. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Because here's the thing. We never know what the real motivation is. When a guy says he wants more freedom to have more fun, and if I have more fun, I'll do better on the weekends, is that actually code for, I just want to do less work? We never know what the real meaning of that is. That's the real problem.
Yeah, that's a good question, Jason. I think still our biggest problem in this sport is the two combined series.
Okay.
I mean, I still feel the year is flooded with too much for these guys. And the higher the level of racing, the more they have to be on point, the more they have to put it during the week to fine-tune their skills and not lose little pieces of their skills and fitness. I think when guys start to look for that, they're trying to look at a way they can almost reduce the year load somehow. And to me, your options are limited, So because if they don't take the races away, well, then it goes back to the training and the weeks. So that's where they still try and find. And I don't think any one of them is trying to do less. It's trying to figure a way of how I can take a breath during this full year. I mean, name any other sport that has a full, especially motorsport, let's just compare to MXGP. They still have a good time off and they do one series. We don't. And that is going to be a challenge for the rest of time until some dynamics change in this field. And the guys get to a point, especially when they've reached their goals, that they can't. I mean, I've been hounded that, I run guys raw and then they retire. No, they reach their goals and they decide then, because they have options, if
Yeah.
they want to carry on or what they want to do. So that's the problem.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like they will say that I'm doing too much work or the grind, but you're saying that they can't change the racing schedule, so they got to either blame the trainer or the team because the schedule is never changing.
No, and even you look at now, travel's difficult. If you, to me, the hardest part about this job is the weekend travel.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel it myself, and I'm not even racing a motorcycle. I come back on a Sunday and I'm useless, until you know what I mean? And then you think of, okay, I've got to get back on it Monday or Tuesday and prepare because the week goes quickly and I'm going to be racing again. So we're doing it for 17 rounds and there's one weekend off. And I get it. It's almost better not to have a weekend off because you almost want to finish everything and then take a break if that's possible. But there's different dynamics, as you guys know, with the calendar and race sites and stadiums and the whole thing too.
So let's say that the fun freedom thing is actually not just because, hey, I'm burned out or I'm stressed or it's too much of a load. Is it like, do you think anyone has ever had a reasonable, like, hey, if we try something crazy out of the box, maybe it'll help our performance? If I ride a different track, or if I go ride in the desert or the hills or the woods or some sand dune, like something crazy, why don't we try something crazy for a performance benefit? Do people come to you with that kind of suggestion or idea? Because your program's really all about, we're doing this thing every day. Does that work at all? Or has anyone even suggested that?
No, I've had suggestions. And once again, I'm open to suggestions. I've told all my guys, if you've got any idea or anything, come to me as long as it's respectfully. And I am an open, hey, let's analyze it. Let's look at the logistics. I think sometimes the problem is they don't understand the logistics. The amount of time I've had people that would say, hey, why don't you guys leave early before the race and come and ride at my place? It's closer to the race place or wherever. And you think, but hang on, there's logistics of a motorcycle. There's mechanic, it's not as simple. So even to go to other places and ride and have different tracks, it's great, but you still got to maintain the bike. You've got all this equipment. And if you do go somewhere and you've left something or you have an engine problem and you've wasted everything. So there's a lot to do with more logistics sometimes, but heck, at my facility, we have 3 Supercross tracks. So we wrote I don't know how many more we could add, and maintenance problems. I think there's a limit that you're probably not going to get around, even though trying to be creative is not a bad thing. I still go and I remind my guys when they say, hey, do you know, especially when you get to the outdoors, do you think we should go to other outdoor tracks? I think enough. I'm perfect. That would be unreal. But we still got to have the logistics of getting there, the time to get there, the time coming back. You got to weigh that all up. I still relate to the poor swimmers. Look at it. Nothing can be more boring than a pool. Watching that line underneath the water.
Yes.
I mean, at least things change in our sport, So it's still tough.
I'm glad you brought that up because Ian Harrison made that point to me last summer. He's like, if you're on a basketball team, you practice on the same court every day.
Yes.
And it's a basketball court. It's just made of wood, like nothing ever changes. And then the swimming thing, perfect example. It's like in most sports, a tennis court. Every tennis court is the same. What's the big deal?
Exactly. Every sport has its little issues. I wish I could put a big old dome around my tracks because sometimes the weather will just destroy everything.
Yeah.
But that's not an option. But you're right. There's always something that's probably not going to be perfect, and that's part of what makes things the way it is. I mean, you've got to navigate and still work on what is the best and what is the best scenario for each guy.
And then also, we're just talking about it from a riding standpoint. But look, you're in the exercise, science, performance thing. And it's like, all you got to do is go on Instagram and every 5 minutes, somebody's trying to sell you some gimmick, some new thing to eat, some new thing to try. I can't imagine how many directions you must get pulled, how many people approach you, and you're trying to come up with the best formula, right? So you're always probably thinking, I can't imagine in your field how many, what if I tried this? What if we try that? How do you filter all these things? Because it's changing every 5 minutes.
Yeah, Jason, that's a big sort of question mark. It's tough. I mean, I get massive amount every day on. I mean, if you just talk nutritional products that are going to change everybody's world, it's insane. And then there's still the added stuff where I get sent so many things to do with the motorcycle, and I'm thinking, like, I can't change stuff on the motorcycle. That's not my department. But there is a lot, and I'm sure even with the teams. But yes, how you filter, and I mean, I always try, and I don't want to be left behind or miss something. So I do analyze a lot of products, a lot of scenarios, and more to do with the logistics of specifically, and almost where I could be a guinea pig before I won't just try my athletes on something I have no idea what it is. So it adds to that little other avenue that keeps building, but that's just part of it. Yeah.
Hey, are there things that you're like, oh yeah, back in 2004, we ate this or we did this type of exercise, and then I've learned like this is better. Has it actually changed a pretty significant amount? Like if you look back, let's pick 16 years ago, you were programming, you're like, no, that's what we used to do, and I learned a better way. Does that happen, or is it pretty similar actually?
No, I think it's pretty similar. The biggest thing that I've learned is I know when the guys are going to start to feel more the mental side of what I call fatigue in a season, because that's kind of a standard, and I'm more like prepared for that. So I think there again, having good documentation and knowing kind of how much each guy's done and where they're at can help you, where you can read them a little bit better even before they start to come up with, hey, would this not be better, or you got to be kind of ready. And ultimately it always goes back to the racing. If things don't go well on the weekend, that's a very easy scenario where you can start chasing your tail, getting a little bit lost, and a blame game developing, because there's a lot on the line, and we're all in the trenches per se. So I think my goal is always to keep those trenches not so full of people, so that when you do have a problem, each guy has his specific job, and it's rounded a little bit easier. And if that situation comes up, if I can say.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because you and I have talked about this. Okay, like I would say, hey, look, you've won all these titles. You've been around 20 years. Your methods are proven. Your results are on a piece of paper anyone can look at. But you always say, no, man, you have like one bad weekend with your guys or two bad weekends, and already people are starting to come at you. Like no one, including Ricky Carmichael himself, who is winning almost everything, no one is assured. Every week is the week where someone's trying to knock you down, and you're not even immune to it. It even gets in your head a little bit. Like you, as I say, you have to almost play dumb and believe that I've proven nothing until next weekend. That's the one that counts.
Yeah. No, that's true, Jason. I mean, unfortunately in this sport, you can go from a weekend where it's unbelievable and then it'd be disaster the next weekend. And so you can never relax.
And does the phone start ringing? Do you start getting, the phone starts ringing even for a guy like you?
Yes. Mondays are typically, if we've done had a weekend, I mean, thank God for Malcolm sort of keeping it together, but my other guys didn't have the best of weekends. And then there's a lot of, what is going on? What are we analyzing to be better? What do we learn out of this? And it's normal. I mean, I don't feel like that's, I hate that. I think that's what sharpens us, but it's still that, oh my, here we go, so, but yes, going back to results, I mean, people don't even think back in the day. That can change so quickly. So that's why, yes, as you said, I don't look at that as anything except, well, that period was good, and we've got to keep maintaining, So
that is wild that it's that competitive like that, and that you can get second guessed. Okay, so over the summer, you're losing some riders. We don't know who's going to join you. Do you ever get to the point where you were like, wait a minute, is the sun setting here? Am I falling onto the back foot? Did you ever get worried that maybe it seemed impossible to me. I had a good 21-year run and it's coming to an end. Did you get worried about that?
No, I don't ever worry about that, because I don't, kind of like what I said earlier, I don't really look back as like, okay, that was the run. No, it's a consistent run until the day I'm not doing this job. So I don't look at that. I always look at it's the same for the teams. When riders come up for renewal, you've always got to look at what's available. And I feel for the teams too, because you never know. We look at this off season and there was quite a lot of shifts. I mean, Eli moving, Jason moved, Malcolm, came over, Aaron moved. It's exciting in a way, but you never know how that's all going to develop. I mean, I feel like even for poor Aaron, he was just actually coming around. I was starting to see where I could see a flow with the guy, and then shame he gets injured. The sport is brutal. And then going forward for the summer, we're not sure, exactly who and how and what's going to be going on there. It's just one of those sort of, I say, years with and where the group is, where they've got to, figure out who's in and who's out in that scenario. But I mean, I don't look at it that, oh my gosh, I'm losing guys or anything like that. I felt being very exclusive, and I will always remain exclusive. And I'm not worried that I couldn't fill the places I need to fill with riders. The good thing is I'm with a good group, and I feel like the group for a group that big actually communicates really well. And with them dealt into 3 subgroups, it's pretty good, and there's a lot of capabilities there. So that's always in the back of my mind. It's positive, because maybe if one isn't doing so well, the other ones should be learning. It's one continual sort of learning curve to keep perfecting as we go through this.
Okay, so did you ever, for yourself, I mean, you've been doing this, the travel is tough. You're at the highest level, so the pressure is tough. Are you like in for another 20 years, or do you even think to yourself, I wonder if there's a way I could do that? I mean, look, you could slap your name on a riding facility and show up 1 day a week and probably get paid for it. So have you thought of a way out, or are you still addicted to this competitive thing? Because you could deal with a lot of pressure doing this program.
Yeah, no, I'm addicted to this.
Oh, okay.
I turned 53 this year. I don't feel like health-wise I've got any problems. I mean, when I look in the mirror, I say, oh gosh, okay, things are changing. But I don't feel any problems. We did a bike ride this morning. I don't feel any part of the training and the desire and everything that I have to get the best for these guys. I really feel for each athlete, because I know they have limited time. This is a young man's sport, and that drives me, that I've got to be there to try and help that they can get the best out of what they're putting in and what the team are expecting and what they're expecting from themselves. So that drives me. I'm really happy. Obviously, adding the facility is a dream come true, and that keeps me sharp, because that's constantly trying to maintain that level. Like I said, the only thing that if I can avoid is the travel. And I think the guys do know that I don't need to be holding their hands on the weekend at the race. I do go to a certain amount of races, and I've told every one of them it's more to do with me in the background trying to learn where they're struggling with, or where there are connections within the team that maybe I can help or take during the week to better something. So, but beyond that, thank God to good TV now. I can watch pretty dang good what's going on and get a good feel, and then live timing, and then I don't feel like I have to be there. So I think if I can limit that part of it, which it is changing, then I'm good for a long period. I don't see myself having any issues for another 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and as far as the client list goes, you and I talked, I think it was back in Oakland, and you're like, what you found out quite quickly is if you do have an opening, you'll also get those phone calls too. There are many interested people if there is an opening, again, because of your exclusivity.
Yeah, and I think that does hold some sort of appeal, where it's my place is not just open to anyone. In fact, we have learned a few things, and it's getting actually less. Where and thank God I have the freedom with the group to sort of mandate that we'll only sort of have the elite of the elite, or who the group, and including myself, decide is is definitely, worth it to come there and do the work. And I think that holds a sort of a higher sort of level right out of the gate for the guys that are maybe a little bit wondering in a way, is like, maybe I should be there, but I shouldn't. At least I think we can eliminate a lot of scenarios that would possibly come into play later.
The Star Yamaha team has Carmichael's old place, which everybody's gone through that at some point. Even you lived there at one point. They're like, hey, we discovered something by having literally like 13 riders beating the crap out of that track, that it maybe makes it replicate a racetrack a little more. How do you balance that part? Because with these 20-minute mains that we've had for about 5 years now, we're seeing the broken down track being a much bigger factor. How do you decide too much, not enough, try to replicate it, maybe not make it dangerous? How do you balance that?
Good question, Jason, on that. I think the way because it is true, the tracks get beaten up, and yes, as we're seeing, by the time the main comes, heck, it's borderline dangerous. The problem that I have is it does not take long for our dirt to get tore up heavily. So I'm not too worried about that. And also I feel like on our practice tracks, with what we have in the scale that we have, even though it's done pretty much to specs of what they race, we don't have all the marshals around. We don't have, so you can't put 20 guys on our track and expect that things are going to go well without some almost borderline chaos. So I still feel that we've got plenty of guys that we can practice really well and do the job well and have a track that is beaten up. If I took pictures of what our track looked like yesterday, it's borderline also dangerous. But the other thing too is these guys have to do so many laps during the week, and that we've got to find that fine line where they can practice, hone their skills, know what they're doing, and get better, but without being really in a dangerous situation. I mean, I was bummed that Aaron got caught out on pretty much a little double, and that I was gutted with that, because those are the kind of things you always try and avoid. It's one thing at races that's full on, but the practice. So I worry about that. If you did have too many and you had that, things are going to slip through the cracks, and it's going to elevate to a problem. Never mind, remember, we only have a certain amount in the day to fix these tracks once these guys are finished. So it's really difficult to analyze that and to stay on point, where you've got a good balance, and you can prep the track decent enough to have for the next day also.
Okay, so you got 4 guys back now, and everybody's working pretty good. So it sounds like you're in a pretty good spot, because I really feel, maybe you don't, but I felt like what I was hearing last summer is like, wow, this is getting chaotic. This is getting dramatic. There's behind-the-scenes stuff. Did you have that sense, and you're like exhaling now that everything's back to where it's supposed to be? Or did you feel the whole time that it was under control and you were going to have 4 guys and it was going to work out fine?
No, I definitely, going back to what you said, Jason, and I know we spoke a little bit at Oakland. Towards sort of the end of Supercross last year, I was, in an area where, man, the tension's worse than ever, and the dynamic between guys, where one's, deciding if he's going forward or not. The other one's deciding, is he, in or out. The other one's also, it's a lot of mixed sort of scenarios, and you're still trying to complete a season. That was difficult. And then I felt the outdoor season, we were all just in a different dynamic, and it caught us all, and we were off. And I'm not blaming riders. I mean, I always say that it's a package. We're all accountable for it. So yes, that was a turbulent time and kind of strange. But then I always look at that. That happens. I mean, you're going to go through times where the dynamic of the riders you have all fit together, and then that dynamic's going to change. So I'm well aware of it. I think it's just trying to manage it well to the best of your ability. But going forward now, I feel like we've learned out of that. We've gone through a couple of scenarios, and we're better for it. And the group now is doing really well. I think they all have learned stuff there. So I'm happy. I mean, if I can compare to this time as to last year, way better. Although at the moment there again, on results wise, we're still not where we need to be. So there's always a challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I can see it. Right. All right. So Cooper's back on board, doing the whole program, and also was he able to even ride this week? Like, how the heck was the dude able to not be hurt? Like that looked. It looked okay. He's got a broken arm or something. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, no, that was crazy, and but he's had a check over. Look, he has got a slight hairline fracture that it's more just discomfort. Which he's a tough guy. I mean, if you go back to that crash he had in Dallas, and then the next weekend he's one tough dude. He's actually where the hand issue, where I thought, oh gosh, there's something there, that's actually not too bad. It's more just all the bruising up the arm and in the shoulder and all that. But he rode yesterday, hammered out some work, and we'll give it I think each day, obviously, it's going to get better and better. So, we're really hoping by the time we get to Saturday that he's pretty much good to go, or at least, good to go for the main race and to put in a performance that we know he's capable of, for sure.
Wow, that's impressive. I feel like one of the underrated things, and maybe some of it's just luck, most of the guys seem pretty durable through your program. I don't know if you have a specific like risk management. Maybe it's literally them being in shape or being flexible or strong or whatever it is. I feel like getting guys through 29 races or at least 17 Supercross rounds is something that you're normally able to do. Is that something you can actually put a finger on that's part of the program, or is it just worked out for you over the years?
Well, I always say it goes back to, the more areas you cover your bases with. I mean, I'm big on flexibility. I'm big on the strength training. Some people laugh that you don't need to be, and I think it's very individual, but I try and cover every base because I feel like it has its place. There is going to be somewhere, it's either during the week or at one of the races, that the guys have a decent tip over, and it can go either way. You've got to be ready for that. And like I said, yes, can you prepare perfectly for that? Well, heck, no. But I do feel in my program there are the areas that I look at that are that preparation and maintenance in order for them to hopefully deal with a bang better than normal,
Yeah, that's funny because, okay, your background is cycling. So you've had many guys trying to poke holes through the years, and one of them was always like, all they do is cycle. They're just cyclists. There's a lot more to it. There is strength training as well. They're not just cyclists.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in a gym. That's before I went into cycling. I mean, that's where I started. And I was a gym dang instructor in England for forever. I mean, that's the gym stuff is. And look, that was a different dynamic too, because I was training guys there. They all wanted to be big. It was all, this is, you don't want to be. So it's a different dynamic, but that's a piece of the pie, just like cycling, it's only a piece of the pie. I mean, I use that as cardio training because these guys have to be cardio fit. So it's just using that experience that I've had and developing it into what I believe will work. But there again, everyone has their idea on that. And that's what makes different trainers in different scenarios,
Well, I want you to articulate this for me. I say this all the time. When you watch the Olympics, the sprinters are built like football players. Like they have serious goals. And the longer the races are and the more the endurance becomes a factor, the skinnier they get. So can you explain why, if you added 20 pounds of muscle to any of your riders right now, why that would actually be bad? Because I think fans on the outside are like, you're an athlete. Bigger, stronger is always better. That's the way it works in most sports. Why does it actually work as a disadvantage here?
Well, it goes to economy, and the point right out of the gate there is to do with the cardio, the high heart rate. Sprinters, it's all about power on the track, and you can see, so they got to take off with the utmost explosive strength, and they only have to go a certain distance, even though their heart rate will be through the roof. But these are what I call, anything over sort of 10 minutes, to me is you're starting to you need endurance, you need good cardio training. These are all the things that to me are aided by getting oxygen to the muscles in a very economic way. So therefore, I do believe power to weight ratio. And once again, it depends on the person. Talking about Aaron, I have to put weight on him. And same as when I had Marvin, different genetic makeup is different. But I do believe there is that optimum economy that the body will work well, getting oxygen to the muscles the right way so you don't pump up. And everyone in this sport knows what happens when you get arm pump.
Yeah.
Never mind if you get, your quads start to load up and everything else. So you want to be economical, but also you've got to be strong because you're manhandling a motorcycle, and also on what we spoke about earlier, in case you have that get off, which that comes, that you're able to, shake it off and walk away.
Hey, in contrast, I bet if you decided to give Malcolm about 6 weeks in the gym and said, let's start lifting heavy, he'd seriously bulk up.
Man, yeah, he's, obviously he's a bigger guy and he's had to cut down a lot of weight, but there's a genetic, guy that, yes, when he's done, man, we can do some, he can be a dang master. He'll be a WWE wrestler or something if he, so he's on the bigger side, and there is qualities to that. I think he's getting more and more economical with the way his cardio system works and his recovery, which has been great to see. But he's also tough. I've seen him, and as you know, that get off that he had in practice this last race at the end of the whoops, that was no small joke. And he shook it off because he's been putting in the work. He's still, I'm not trying to grow muscle for him. We don't do any form of heavyweight. It's more all to do with just, strength and the durability that the muscles need to maintain.
It's an interesting dynamic with Malcolm because obviously we were around him. I'm sure, Jesus, goes almost 10 years when you were working with James, or more than 10 years actually, that you were working with James. He was around then. Was he involved at all? Was he doing any of the program, even like on the periphery a little bit back then? Or was it like, hey, Malcolm, and that's about it back in those days?
I used to just say, hey, Malcolm, as he rolled by on a Segway, eating probably some type of, I don't even know what, but he was just a goofy guy that I remember drifting around, always smiling, happy-go-lucky. But I do remember back in the day watching him a little bit on the bike, and I was like, man, he's actually got skill and talent, Yeah. So it's always been there. I think it's just been, and I don't want to say this in a bad way, he was the younger one and under the shadows of a phenomenal rider like James, and now I feel like he's coming into his own, and the big thing is that he believes now. I don't know if he fully believed in the past, if he was, being under such a big shadow, but he has all the ingredients, and I think he's starting to see that. We're seeing it weekend after weekend. Where he is putting up good practice lap times, he's winning heat races. He's really close now to finish, sealing the deal. And then I feel that'll open up a whole nother avenue for him, which I'm excited to see.
I'm glad you brought that up, because what I'm thinking is if you threw Malcolm at, say, he's 29 now. If 21, 8 years ago, they threw him into your program, I don't think it would have worked the same, because I don't think his desire and competitiveness was rooted yet.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Jason. I think he was probably a slow maturing guy, and he's had to go through some of the, I think the difficulties, and no one wants to go through challenges and difficulties and injuries and lack of support in a way, and multiple teams. And now he's finally, but I feel like it's hardened him up, and it's made him who he is today, which is, I'm telling you, he's got all the qualities to be a champion, that's for sure.
All right, two other topics I want to touch on here. First of all, the beginning of the year, the riders are struggling. We hear it's the new bike. They're trying to adjust to the new bike and all that. How do you, and this is not the first time you've had riders dealing with that, how do you mesh yourself with that? I know you said that's not your job, that you don't want to be involved too much, but you can't not be involved. How does that all balance out on your perspective and your role?
Yeah, I think it is always tough when, the new bike for sure, and that's where Austria always does an amazing job. They go back with all the stuff that they felt for the last few years on the old bike have maybe not been great, and they perfect that. The problem that we have is called Supercross. I think all the testing and the development of a bike is done with outdoor motocross. But I think that's probably standard with all the bikes. Then you get a new bike. The compounding problem this year was the lack of equipment, and I think it's been worldwide, where we've been struggling to get all the right parts and things. So I think that's a dynamic that people don't think of, that things came later than what we wished, and it is what it is. and the lack of per se having enough of the new stuff sort of steered the guys where, they couldn't really have the bikes in Florida. They had to be a lot more in California. They had to go through a lot of dynamics of comparisons and the stuff that they, I feel, do a great job at. But it all takes time, and we don't have time. And I think that's where we got caught off a little bit, and how things work at different, in California, that's different to how the East Coast is, and plus with having some new riders too that have gone from aluminum bikes, over now to the steel frame. I think there were a lot of challenges, and I'm not trying to make excuses, because everybody, when they get their new bike, has to go through sort of ups and downs of where one area is really good, but other areas we got to figure out. So I think we were caught off a little bit initially, but they're learning. I think we're making progress, and there again, you only see every weekend if it's going to work or not, and it's always a different track, different dirt. So there's a few things that are make it tough to figure out. But overall, I believe there's a lot of potential with this bike, and I think we haven't tapped into it all. But I do believe we'll get there.
But do you just stand in the back, or do they expect you to be like, hey, you're watching these guys, what do you see? What do you think? Do they go to you for bike? I want to say advice. That's probably too strong. Do you stay out of it, or are you in these conversations to a degree, even though that's not necessarily your spot?
I'm in the conversations with what I can see, and that's, are the guys having a good day, or are they struggling? And I can pinpoint the areas where they're struggling. And then again, I think it's good for me. They want to feel like, well, how were the conditions? What we were dealing with, because there's always that dynamic that, the main factories in California, and then we're in Florida. We need both. I think there's no discounting that you can have just one and not the other. It's that communication, and so I try and help where I can, but the riders are pretty good too, that they check in with their crew each day after riding anyway. So it's not often, it's more typically that once a week that I check in, or if they call me and ask me specific questions. And the cool thing is we do a lot of video, and we send that to them, and then they can analyze and see and come up with different ideas to help. So the dynamic is all good there. I don't think anyone is sort of pushing harder than the other. I think the group's working pretty well, and there again, you got sort of the two main groups that I deal with, Husky, and then obviously KTM.
My last thing is, okay, so it's funny to see guys like, say, Chad Reed, James Stewart, now they want to be like buddies, right? And you were there. These guys were not buddies back in the day. Carmichael and Chad are buddies. I think Carmichael and Stu get along now. But what I always figure is they have this collective shared experience that only a few people have. Back then it was being rivals, but now it's like, hey, we lived this war almost together, and you're one of the few that understand what I went through. Do you eventually come around with your guys, even if they do leave, and it's not even good when they leave? Do you eventually come around like, dude, you were in the trenches with these guys? Do you eventually come around and become friends, even in a way you couldn't when you were their trainer down the road, because you lived so much with them, even the bad times back then? Does that work that way?
I think there again, it depends on the rider. And where they're at. I always look forward to it, and I've told every one of them, is that I look forward to the day when you're done and retired, and I can go somewhere with you and watch you eat a disgusting steak and it not make me ill to my stomach, but or whatever the case is. But I think it's like, I'll give you, when I was in California in January, I went and hung out with Villo, and it was awesome. It was so nice to freely chat about everything, and I'm not worried about the scenario of him having to perform. And I think things would be better, if I go back, with Ricky, but, Ricky's in Tallahassee, I'm down here in Claremont, I hardly see him on the weekends. So I think that dynamic sort of also can make things difficult. I haven't seen James lately. I think he's mentioned he still wants to come up and see my place, but I think he's got too much golfing on his calendar. So, but there is that call where we can talk about, and I look forward to that. I honestly do, and I hope that there's never any bad blood. There shouldn't be, especially when I look back and I felt like every one of my guys, their careers have been pretty dang good. It's not been a disaster. I get on really well with Dunge, and we communicate quite a lot. And even though he's up in Minneapolis, and he wants to move back down to Florida, actually. So I think that'll be cool. So
finally. So I don't know how this guy's hung in there for 3 years through these winters. Why is he doing this?
I give him all the credit, but I think they've had enough. And I think the deciding factors you see when you have kids is you can't keep them in the house all day. So. Yes. But they've just had their new little addition, little guy. So I think once that settles, I doubt there'll be another winter up there, So that'll be kind of cool.
Because you have told me this, like, look, your job, you're friendly with the guys, but you can't totally be their friend. The relationship client to trainer is a little different than that in the moment when you're working with them. You have to almost not be cool sometimes.
Yeah. No, and that's a difficult thing there because you've got to maintain that respect and heck, man, some days I do analyze it and I think, man, I wish the guys, like I think I told you, they don't invite me to dinner. There's no way, I mean, hell, they don't even give me a thanks for anything. It's not often, and not that I ask for that. I got a job to do, and that's the deal. But I think yes, you can only really let that guard down and have that when the guys are completely finished up, because there's always that element of things get difficult or it comes to a point. I've got to be able to tell them what I feel they need to be doing with certainty and not be torn. Well, man, the guy's going to be a bit bummed or he's going to be, because I've always got to look at the job in hand. And that sometimes can kind of mess with a relationship.
Does it take a little while though? Because look, Cooper came back. But there are some guys that are around, so to speak, that were recently working with you. Are those relationships okay? Or is it going to take a little while? Or do you see Marvin, is it still, hey, what's up? Or is it
no, I think there again depends on the person. But like talking to Marv, when I see him, we chat, we're good. In fact, when he was in Florida before Daytona, he came and rode at my place.
Oh, wow.
And and there's no issues there. They're a great couple and I don't see any problems there. Heck, they came around, I think it was the second night that they were, or just after that, while they were still down here in Florida, and hung out and that's what I'm saying. There's no problems. And even good old Burrito, when I see him, there's no problems with me and Jason. I wish him well when he's done well. He's had some phenomenal races this year. So I know them well enough that they're trying to do their best. They're trying to make the decisions that are best for them, just like I have to make decisions what I feel. I don't feel like that should get in the way of where you've been. I mean, because you've been in the thick and thin with them, so, but I can, it goes back to that whole girlfriend thing. When you're really, really close to someone, it can be a little bit difficult, a bit challenging, but I feel as you mature and you get a little older, that part for my end is look at that as a hassle, because I always believe, and things don't change. The circumstances change, and that's typically what creates a dynamic anyway.
Well, you nailed it. I think that's the lesson we got out of this hour here, which is there are personal things that happen and maybe even drama or tension, but it's all because of a competitive environment, and the results pull on that, and the bike pulls on that, or the schedule pulls on that, and that makes people act and feel ways that maybe they don't genuinely feel, but in the moment, that seems real. And you find out after the fact it was just racing, schedule, those kind of things. Yeah,
like I said, there's so many dynamics that's I say it's I think people just gotta be. It's not personal. Yeah. There's a lot of areas that pull and weigh on you to get this job done the right way. So, and that's what it's about.
Right. So, as you found, once that part's out, they're retired, say, suddenly the dynamic's totally fine. Once the results aren't hanging over every weekend.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. So
Yeah, even Aldon Baker. You're only as good as your last race. The result, you're sweating Indy on Saturday right now on Wednesday. You're sweating it.
Exactly. Because man, I want a nice phone call on Monday that everything was, man, good job, carry on.
All right. That's what keeps you guys competitive. Well, this has been enlightening. Glad I got a chance. And I didn't even know Cooper was back. So there we go. We just learned something here. That's why we make the calls.
There we go. No, well, thanks, Jason.
Yep.
Appreciate you and what you do. And thanks for checking in.
All right. We'll see you soon. Thanks, man.
Okay,
Appreciate
bye.
it.